Hi, this is Sam Robinson. I am the Gnostic Syncretist. Today I want to talk to you about the Gnostic Cosmology story, which is essentially the Gaian mythos. The mythos of the Aeon Sophia herself, and where basically all of this originates. So let's just dive right in. The Gnostic Cosmology is very intricate, vast in scope, and foundational in ascertaining an intimate understanding of our origin stories as a species. And it firmly establishes an omni-racial inception point with a guiding narrative for the Anthropine race to realign itself to its veiled primordial nature and its pivotal part in this divine experiment with which we have found ourselves, essentially. The Gnostic Cosmology Genesis story introduces what we call the Aeons as the divine authors of life in our galaxy, residing in the milky luminous pleroma, which is the center point of our galaxy, and they are beings essentially composed of pristine prismatic living light, or plasmatic energetic sentient currents of gendered energy. There are male and female aeons. We were created by the Aeon Thelete, male, which is Christos, and the Aeon Sophia, which is wisdom. The one source, the unknowable, unperceivable, life-generating essence of the indefinable Godhead, allocates its life emanating and generating power to the gendered sets of aeons, which were themselves manifested as the varied individual divinic aspects of the Godhead's manifested emanations, or dreaming beings, essentially. The Aeons were endowed with the one source divine power to manifest all forms of life, and did so by working in gendered pairs, as I stated a moment ago, designing genomic experiments that were then sent to the galactic spiral arms through panspermia. Upon the completion of a panspermic dissemination of a new genomic life form, these Aeons initiated avid scientific observation of the new burgeoning genomic experiment for fractal data that could enhance future projects in any way that it could. However, the aeonic tendency was one of non-interference with an experiment post its divinely issued emanative genesis. Once it's been manifested beyond its inception point, they essentially took a hands-off and just observed for this fractal data. These massive divine sentient plasmatic vibrational expressions of the unknowable source were essentially galactic bioelectric scientists passively and perpetually initiating divine experiments, filling the galactic arms with a plethora of varied, vibrant organic life forms with self-directive and self-expressive and self-generative instinctive programming. Yet our genomic template was divinely designed with a particular aeonic fusion that was synchronistically and symmetrically co-generated by, as I said earlier, the two aeons Thelete, which is Christos, and the youngest of these celestial beings, Aeon Sophia. She was a pleromic expression or vibrational aspect of the self-generated personified wisdom. Hold on one second. Dreaming in a harmonically and vibrationally synchronized form that fuse the gendered polarities results in the manifestation of our bio-spiritual genomic template called the Anthropos, or the Anthropine species, if you will. Its manifested template is panspermically sent as a conscious pleromic expression into the galactic arms, specifically nesting in the third arm of the Orion Nebula, according to John Lash, who was a Gnostic visionary. However, due to our overdosed endowment of divine intelligence, our imaginative power, called epinoia by the Gnostics, during our first 9 manifestations, we were overcome by that pleromic power of epinoia and either destroyed their experiment or were incapable of harnessing the divine capacities symbiotically expressed in that world. This is, for the most part, according to the Gnostic visionary John Lamb Lash. Just want to give him credit. But this is my own rendition of it. The initial 9 anthropic templates, according to the Nag Hammadi scriptures, failed, and this led to the so-called agitation of the Aeon Sophia. This Aeon Sophia, in the manner of a concerned mother, became incensed with a passion for her creation, for a creationist plight of repeated mismanifestation, and falls into a fit of self-dreaming, or which means emanating unilaterally without the aid of her aeonic partner or consort, and then begins to drift out of the pleroma and into the third arm of the Orion Nebula, which is called the fall of the wisdom goddess, the fall of the Aeon Sophia. The impact of this aeon's plunge into the lower realms of electromagnetism, gravity, manifestation, and the densification of celestial matter resulted in the anomalous generation of Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, and thus, afterwards, his genetic replicants, the Archons. This piece of Gnostic intel can be presented and interpreted in several fashions. Mythologically, the story is presented as follows. The Aeon Sophia decided to self-emanate without her counterpart Thelidae and the consort of the originator, and decides to create unilaterally a life form. But it was an abomination with the head of a lion and the body of a serpent, lacking essential pleromic bipolarity, and thus is it a complete abomination. This is Yahweh. This is Yaldabaoth. This is our major antagonist in our world. She was horrified by her creation and placed it in a manifested world with high clouds, angelic in its beauty, yet hidden from the other aeons, and thus hiding Yaldabaoth from the pleromic realm. Thus, Yaldabaoth, being ignorant of the higher pleromic realms and other divinities, concludes that he is God, creator, and declares himself so, followed by his celestial organization of matter in our solar system, while Sophia is inadvertently plunged into planetary metamorphosis, morphing into Gaia over a period of time. The Apocrypha of John, that I talked about in some other earlier videos, states that he stole great power from his mother, her pleromic creative life essence ejected into matter upon impact, but ironically was ignorant of this power and is thus named Samael, the Blind One. The scientific explanation of this mythological scenario purports that Sophia, with her being living plasma light energy, has an inordinately bizarre impact on inorganic matter in the galactic arms, and as in the abiogenesis of the Acari insects, y'all should look that up. Acari being ACARI. Insects, this plasmatic impact creates electrically an inorganic insectoid etheric race able to replicate itself and induce psychic inception and suggestions and simulation, nemesis, or virtual reality psychic projection. Much like the Roman Empire of old, the Archons were masters of mimicry, conceiving synthetically similar etheric and inorganic counterfeits of the pleromic or Sophianic organic emanations, in an attempt to affect our plane of conscious reality psycho-spiritually. Through our psyche, these Archons are the anthropine species' cosmic cousins, and are particularly jealous of our infusion of spirit from the pleroma, an endowment they are lacking. According to the Apocrypha of John as well, again, our original creation was named Pigoradamus, a perfect human, a divine manifestation of the perfect mind, through the expressed will of the invisible spirit and the will of the self-generated. The first revelation, the truth, the invisible one, gave him an invincible power of mind. That is straight out of the Nag Hammadi. This immaculate pleromic expression of aeonic intelligence sat with the self-generated Harmazal in a higher realm. However, it is only following the aberrant manifestation of the demiurge Yaldabaoth and his Archon replicants that our Sophianic template reaches Earth. Yaldabaoth and the Archons are glorifying in their heavenly realm when the divine self-generated issues a thunderous holographic projection of our anthropic template into the celestial realm, lower celestial realms. Yaldabaoth witnesses this emanatory projection and decides to create the material body of it, enlisting the Archons to engineer the form as revealed by the self-generated. Once finally pieced together by exactly 365 Archons, and yes, I know that some of this is reiteration of before, but that's just how it goes. One corresponding to each body part that is materially engineered upon completion. The chief Archon, self-declared god of the cosmos, Yaldabaoth, attempts to generate the constructed bioform bidding it to rise with life, yet it remains inert. Lying immovable refuses to do so. Lying immovable refuses to rise up. Despite his substantial powers, Yaldabaoth cannot get us to rise up, as I stated last time. The self-generated sends down the four luminaries, as I've stated. The demiurge manipulates Yaldabaoth into infusing the prostrate form with his mother's light that he is ignorant of and pridefully unaware of, and thus doing inadvertently reduces his powers in any pleromic endowments he may have had. The form is vitalized and rises up, which is us, and displays inherently its higher intellect, consciousness, and understanding, and becoming enlightened with a divine imaginative strength of mind and awareness that far surpasses the haughty authorities and the spiritual overlord that have created it. Yaldabaoth and the Archons immediately realize their cousin's superior nature and become instantly hostile, jealous, and initiate a retaliation to regain his mother's light. This drives them to take the Anthropos and hurl him down to the lowest realm of material reality, as I've stated in the last video, and put to sleep its intuitive ability to realize its prison-like entrapment as well as many of its spiritual endowments. These are at least two ancient manuscripts which refer to the intrepid scenario. The Nag Hammadi script, the Nag Hammadi Library, and the enigmatic Kolbrin Bible. In the Nag Hammadi Library, in the apocryphal text Secret of John, it quotes, "The first ruler Yaldabaoth heard the voice and thought it had come from his mother, not realizing its source. The entire realm of the first ruler quaked and was lit by this image, and the first ruler stared at its appearance. Yaldabaoth said to the authorities, 'Come, let's create a human being after the image of God and with the likeness to ourselves, so that this human image may give us light.' They created through their respective powers. According to the features by which they were given, each of the authorities contributed a physical feature corresponding to the figure of the image they had seen, and had said, 'Let's call him Adam, that its name may give us the power of light.' He breathed his spirit into Adam. The spirit is the power of his mother, but he did not realize it, for he lives in ignorance," it says. "The body moved and became powerful, and it was enlightened. At once the rest of the powers became jealous. Although Adam came into being through them all, and they gave their powers to this human, Adam was more intelligent than the creators and the first ruler. When they realized that Adam was enlightened and could think more clearly than they, and was stripped of evil, they took him and threw Adam to the lowest part of the whole material realm and put him to sleep." Now, let's go to the Kolbrin Bible. Now, in the Kolbrin Bible, the brief mention of an exceedingly similar passage relays another archetypal variation of our divine suppression by a jealous God. "What you know to be good, seek for." Quote, "What you know to be good, seek for, and it shall be found. You may plumb the seas and pluck the stars. You may live in everlasting glory and savor our eternal delights. Above and below and all about, there is nothing beyond your reach. All with one exception is yours to attain." The God laid his hand upon man, saying, "Now, you are even as I, except you sleep there enclosed in matter, in the kingdom of illusion, while I dwell here in the freedom of reality and truth. It is not for me to come down to you, but for you to reach out to me." End quote. A very interesting passage. Shortly after this one states, "Bafflingly, he was then even as God himself, and he knew the secrets of the 7 spheres within 3 spheres." Obviously, I'll have to look more into that later. I'm still not entirely sure what that means. And now let me just give a brief extrapolation on what I think they have essentially done to us. The Archons have seemingly ensnared the human species in inherently low density or inferior vibrational bodies, thus trapping and essentially suppressing our primordial etheric spirit form and physicality. This represses our psychic abilities and natural gifts as a race, forces us into a finite, decaying scenario requiring reincarnation or renewal of spiritual energy into corporeal forms for equilibrium to arise. The Archons have attempted and would have likely successfully repossessed their renewal process and are, in all probability, trying to siphon off the life force energy and our unique spirit bioluminescence for themselves, vainly attempting to reacquire the ancient Sophianic fire lost by Yaldabaoth. The elaborate matrix of existential dimensional control they exhibit upon the Anthropos' divine experiment is a masterpiece of psychological, ideological, and spiritual manipulation. on an inconceivably deep scale, touching every aspect of humanity's history and social evolution. They are the Elohim of ancient mention. Maybe. The Elohim could also be the Aeons. But they are mentioned creatively, devised, and insinuated the major world religions, and specifically the Abrahamic religions, as elaborately engineered psychological traps meant to evolutionarily degenerate our psyche into amnesia, misdirecting the Gaian instinctual symbiosis programming. And I say again, they have elaborately engineered psychological traps meant to evolutionarily degenerate our psyche into amnesia, misdirecting the Gaian instinctual symbiosis programming, the unnatural religious program of the archontic traditions, bind the human species into a master-slave relationship upon which salvationism arises to chain the anthropos, only hope, to an off-world deity, and disempower their natural tendency to rely upon themselves for radical change in their chaotic world.